Right. Welcome to our next presentation at Wrestling Mindset's Virtual Coaches Clinic, our second that we've done in 2021. So today we're going to listen to Mike Powell. He's the Executive Director of Beat the Streets Chicago. He's got a great background in coaching. Before he was with Beat the Streets, he was at Oak Park River Forest in Illinois. Just a reminder that he is our representative for Beat the Streets today, and there are donations that we are driving for their program and for their cause to try to help their mission of altering life's trajectories and improving wrestling at some places that haven't had it for a long time in inner city urban environments. Also today in our thoughts and prayers are Matt Eveleth and Don Ernst, both close friends and teammates of the Wrestling Mindset family. Don Ernst actually coached the Zanettis back when they were in high school. Both of them right now are battling cancer, so we're going to keep them in the forefront of our thoughts. On top of this, we're just glad to see everybody join us today for all of our different presentations. Just hope you learn a lot. If you have any questions, please throw those in the Q&A feature, and I'll get those to Mike Powell as we go. But without further ado, Mike, you've run a lot of successful programs, and right now you're driving, Beat the Streets Chicago as a whole. I know that you got a lot of coaching knowledge and a lot of different things we want to cover today. Why don't you start off with something that every high school coach, struggles with at some point? What are some of the tips or tactics you use to recruit athletes to your programs, and how do you retain those athletes year after year?
All right. So recruiting and retaining, that's what I heard you say, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, let me get to those. First, I want to say, just if I could add something out about Beat the Streets, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Everybody out there here who's watching has a vested interest in the sport of wrestling and the growth of our sport. It's something we talk about a lot. As we talk about growing the sport. And that's what I tell all our donors. There's only so much you can grow the sport in Del City, Oklahoma. You know what I mean? And it's great. Get all those little kids into wrestling, but you're talking about the history of wrestling. It's Iowa, it's Oklahoma, it's small town Ohio, it's small town Pennsylvania. If we really want to grow the sport, let's invest in places that, one, really need it. So it's a win-win situation here. And two, Chicago proper. I'm not talking about the 10 million that live in the greater Chicagoland. Chicago proper has 2.8 million people. How many USA cards can we find there? Yeah. And how many kids can we help along the way? So if people are donating, if people are supporting, this is what you're supporting. Our initiative is to grow our sport and do it in places and with kids that really are going to benefit from, what I call the world's greatest vehicle for self-improvement. So that's my Beat the Streets thing. I've got a lot on recruiting. All right. So I've got a lot, I think right now, and I want to preface this by saying, right now, more than ever before, at least where I am from where I sit, our kids sat dormant for 14 months. They weren't allowed in their schools. The park districts in Chicago are shut down. The suburbs directly in Cook County, very close to Chicago, all shut down. None of them are allowed to have summer camps. And it's very different than the experience like my sister in Idaho had, where her kid was playing hockey year round. Like that, none of that stuff happened by us. So what's happening is, wrestling rosters have been diminished. You missed a whole year of recruiting freshmen. There's a whole year of youth recruiting that didn't go on. And, even in the areas, in my experience, as you get a little further west in Chicagoland, it becomes a little bit more rural. Kids are practicing, but they're doing it in the affluent guy's garage because he outfitted, that type of thing. That doesn't help wrestling numbers. That does not help our sport. And so we're in a kind of a crisis mode right now, and spending extra time recruiting from ages 5 to the end to wherever you're coaching is super important. So some just some couple thoughts on my stuff is when you go out to the football field or the soccer field or wherever it is, the young coach, when I was a young coach, went after the middle linebacker. All right, who's the running back? I'm going to get him. No, you're not. It's just not. It doesn't happen. The running back. Sports have come really easy to him or her their whole lives. What you want is, when you go talk to the football team, you want the one kid that kind of loiters afterwards or looks at you like you're a budding father figure or older sibling in their lives. Those are the kids that stick through it. They buy in, all that stuff. Obviously, you take the middle linebackers because every once in a while there's a middle linebacker or a running back or a quarterback who end up thriving in wrestling and they do great. We had a kid who ended up being a 4-year starter at Illinois, was an all-state football player, and we recruited him off the football team. He is the exception, not the rule. The rule is you want those, what we call at Oak Park, we called them B team bombers. So the freshman B team, they were all heavily recruited. And man, we had all-staters come out of there. We had captains of state championship teams come out of those, you know what I mean? And some of these kids are athletic or they haven't grown yet, or maybe their skill set, they don't have a flat, a 5'4" or a 4.5 40 that's super fast, but they have huge hands or they have strong hips, and you find them. So when you're recruiting, don't put all your eggs into that super athlete basket. They don't work out for the most part. Find the kids that need a father figure, that needs something bigger to belong to. And remember, that's the kid that's going to cut the extra weight for you his senior year to make the lineup and make your dual team stronger. That's the kid who does great with fundraising and community building and goes out and recruits other kids and, that type of, and those are the great stories. The kid who you get who maybe didn't have a father in their life or comes from a troubled home life, and they're looking at you and saying, hey, this is something I could build myself through. So just something to consider. Now that I just said that, as a coach and a special ed teacher, every problem child in the school got sent my way. Most of them don't work unless they come to you on their own volition. So if kids come to you, right? Okay. But when teachers saying, this kid keeps beating everybody up and stealing everything, take him and fix him. That typically doesn't work. So it's just something else. And that's the way you differentiate the at-risk kids that you take on. Because if you take too many at-risk kids on, and they're stealing, and all of a sudden they end up, with somebody else's money in their pocket from your locker room, now it starts cutting into your culture. And that's there needs to be a balance of achievers and everything else. The way I always looked at the at-risk kids that we purposely brought in was, were they looking for something? Because it's far easier to earn buy-in. And obviously we never turned a kid away, but I can give, if the teacher told me, hey, this kid got caught with drugs, can you take him? I'd be like, probably not. We'll have a meeting. So there's that. And then I, as a high school coach, went to the other coaches and I said, give me a kid. Give me 2 names who you think would benefit from wrestling, right? Will buy into our culture, wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. Don't care about athleticism. Don't care about their background, their race, whatever, and nothing else. Just give me those things. Do they look like they need something in their lives, right? Do they show up for practice every day if they're on the football or soccer team or a cross country team? That type of thing. And they would give me names. I would write a letter where all of our graduates went to college, what we do in the community, how we serve, everything that had anything to do with character building and what our program was about, aside from wrestling. Never said how many state championships we had or anything else. It just said, here is what we do. Here's how we support our kids academically. Here is where our kids go on in college. And then I would print those letters out with our artwork on it, and it would say relentless pursuit and all this stuff. And then I would sign it. And then I would hand write that kid's name on it. So Andre Lee, the kid I talked about before, the guy, he's a grown man now that I talked about before, I pulled him out of English class. Excuse me, can I meet with Andre for a minute outside of class? And I said, I heard you're a guy that we want. I want you to take this letter. I want you to take it home. I want you to show it to your mom. We want you on our team. So I literally hand delivered letters to kids in the cafeteria, in English class, in the football locker room, and everything else. And I'd hand out 30 or 40 of those letters, and 6 of them would come out, and 2 of them would make it. But in that particular class, we're the #1 team in the country that year. That's Andre Lee and Imante Logan. They're both 4-year wrestlers who went on to become all-staters and went on to become successful men, successful college athletes. So the handwritten or the letter printed out and hand addressed to kids was huge for us. When I went to the lunchroom or to a football field or to a soccer field, and I reached out to a group. Lunchroom's a little bit funny. Football field and soccer field, there's always a couple kids. And the #1 thing is I go out and I talk. And I talk. And the kids are a little squirrely in the lunchroom, so I'd separate some guys and hold them back. But the football guys, after they would bring me out before practice or at the end of practice, I'd always grab the 2 kids that I thought like really were keep an eye contact with me, really look like they were focused. And I'd say, what is your name? Give me your mom's phone number right now. I'm going to call her. Do you want to be on the team? Okay. Do you need help with me convincing your mom to be out for the team? So I always did that type of stuff.
Now, Coach, one of the things that you're talking about here is, going to others to help them find the right people and help create these, openings for you to move in on an athlete that you're going to possibly, recruit. Did you ever find that you struggled with certain coaches being maybe territorial over their athletes, or like other coaches that didn't buy in that wrestling was something that was good for them? Is that experience that you had, and is there strategies you use to deal with that?
Yes, that's an absolutely great question. I mean, it's a fantastic question. Even our football coach was one of the best freshman wrestling coaches I ever had, maybe the best freshman wrestling coach. Would tell his guys, no, you can't go to Fargo. You have to be at football camp, or some 7-on-7 thing. I don't even know what that is. Throw a pigskin around. And here's number one thing I always tell the high school kids was, I've never met a football coach who didn't play the best football players, no matter what they did in the summer, ever. What that means is you're not going to start the first set of downs as the Mike linebacker or as the defensive end or as whatever you are. But after somebody misses a tackle, you're going to be put in. I said that to Andre and Imante. They went to Fargo. You know what I mean? It was like so that the single biggest thing I did was deal individually with kids, right? And then eventually, what happened in our programs, we built a culture so strong that the kids went and advocated for themselves, and the parents advocated with themselves, and that's a whole different ballgame. So that's kind of next level thing. It's first thing I would talk to the kids. All right. Of course, you got to talk to the other coaches. You're not changing a grown man's view of things. There's still football coaches that say lift during wrestling season and run track, as if somehow that's going to make you tough. You know what I mean? And as you know, high school football, really 90% of high school football is who's willing to run their head into somebody else. Now you have to use your shoulder, but shoulder, is harder than anybody else. That's the wrestler. So I don't need to explain to this audience the benefits of wrestling and football, but individually advocating with each kid. And my single best line was, you're going to play. If you are meant to play, you are going to play. There's never, literally in the history of football, nobody benches the best kid. Those guys are competitors. They want to win, right? Be there for everything else. But during Fargo, you're going to Fargo. During our camp, you get to miss their lift once in a while, that type of thing. So, and then I would advocate with parents. And then the kind of final level of that is create self-advocates. So, do you in April, you're having a great off season. Do you plan on going to Fargo? Yes. You better start talking to your coach about it. Because if you bring it up the week before, and he's just had a bad day, or you catch him off guard, he's going to say, no, you have to be here. But if you show up and you're proactive and say, coach, I'm going to raise money. This is a big goal of mine, and this and that. So if kids are out there advocating for themselves, they'll be there.
And, no, I think that's huge. And Coach, one of the things I keep you keep using the word culture, which I absolutely love. I think it's really important. And these other pieces of your culture that at least I'm taking from what you're saying is like you're looking for kids that want to be there, kids that you're not just focusing on like the best athletes or on victory or winning, but like on what those kids are going to become through the process of being part of this team. So let's take this as kind of like a jump off point into talk about your views about building a strong culture, its importance, and like ways that you were able to do that at your program that, one, really impacted lives, and two, allowed you to have success on the mat as well.
Okay, let me end one last thing in terms of recruiting.
Sure, yeah.
I think the single most important thing I said to kids was when I'm trying to get them out in ninth grade. So this is different than you're pulling a sixth grader, but you say some version of all this is, for us, it's 800 or 900 kids in a graduating class. 14 or 15 of you will be wrestlers. The wrestlers are going to be better than everybody else. No offense to the other kids, but you are going to be set up in life. You're going to walk across that stage and have done things that nobody else there can ever fathom. You're going to be part of a group that is so elite, a culture and a group that is so elite. You're going to do so many incredible things that you are going to be better suited for life the next 60 years, 18 on. And I always use that one because I think it speaks to the achiever. No matter how good they are, the kid that like has that growth mindset, that wants to achieve, that loves to be challenged. That was my big thing. This is what I always ended with was you're going to be better set up. So There's that. Okay, in terms of culture and leadership and all that stuff, I have a whole litany of stuff on this. It's kind of what I've studied for the last 20 years, but I think the single biggest thing that I have to that I can give to any other young coach or anybody trying to build culture is, it's kind of like 15 years ago, everybody talked about hand fighting. You know what I mean? It was like, well, but what is hand fighting? Now there's like systems to hand fight. Hopefully people know what that means. But you used to hear the term all the time. Well, you hear culture all the time, but what does it mean? It's like, it's not tangible. You know what I mean? So what happens is something that isn't tangible, you can't put it on your to-do list, is it just gets put to the back burner. And you've got fundraisers to do, and you've got kids with crises in their family, and you got to raise money for Fargo, and you've got to plan practice, and you've got to do all this other stuff. But if you're not spending 20 to 30% of your time on building culture, you're just chasing your own tail. 20 to 30% of your time needs to be invested. Really, I should say leadership and culture. And that means developing yourself as a leader, developing your coaches and your captains as leaders, because they're going to maintain it and propagate your culture, right? But also spending that kind of like non-tangible time to create something that you can't really hold on to is abstract. And frankly, probably above the pay grade for coaches that are making $3,200 a year. But if you want to be good and you want to have impact that goes beyond the ages of 18 or 12 or whenever your kids are graduating your program, and you want to affect their mindset for life, and you want to help them set priorities, and you want to build soft skills and executive functioning, your culture has to be there. And for that to happen, you have to make serious investments. You have to read books, means you have to watch videos, means you need a mentor or multiple mentors. One of the greatest things I ever did was leave a table where a bunch of young coaches were complaining about how wimpy their kids were, and go sit myself next to a guy who had won 6 straight state championships, and basically said, would you be my mentor? Can I call you 5 or 6 times a year? We ended up being, roommates in Fargo. And, it was like, this guy helped me build my career. And so, do you have a mentor? So are you putting all that, the proper amount of time into building culture? And I've got a saying for this that you can remind yourself, you can talk to your coaches and everything else. Don't lose the mission in the minutia. We do so much day-to-day stuff that if you're not setting the sails, if you're not constantly talking about the course you're on and where your kids are going, where your coaches are going, where your organization is going, if you're not painting this constant picture for everybody, and you're constantly focused on details, culture doesn't just magically happen. Just doesn't happen. So there's that. So the other thing that I want to say about culture is it's buy-in and culture are for all practical purposes synonymous, right? So having earning buy-in from your kids into this culture, into this vision that you as the head coach, or you as the coaches, or the leaders of a program have is everything. So use that word, think about what that means. How are you earning buy-in? Are you talking about it constantly? It needs to be ever present, right? So there's that. And then in terms of culture, my 3 C's are clear, consistent, and charismatic. And it's kind of trite, but here's the deal. Nobody follows a vision that isn't painted for them regularly, because it fades. So you have to talk about it all the time. It has to be clear. Here is where we are going. Here is how we are going to do it. When you are all in on this bus, so we use the bus analogy, hop on the bus, but you could set the sails, whatever analogy you're using. Be super consistent about the messaging, how you say it, and talk about it all the time, and make sure you are painting creating a clear vision for parents, for kids, for coaches, where everybody feels like they're moving in the same direction. That's it. That's the single most important thing you do. And then you have to do it consistently. You have to do it over and over and over again. And, I have a great story about this. In 2009, we won the state championship. I got super sick. And I thought, oh, well, it's okay. We won state, like the culture's there. Everything's fine. And in short order, when I was basically a non-functional human, things started to fall apart. And I learned the lesson, and that grind of constantly talking about building your culture, it never ends. It's a year-long process. So being consistent with it is great. And then the other thing is, this idea of charisma, who you are in front of the kids is who you are. And it shouldn't be, this, I don't know, the best way to put it is you have to put your best foot forward all the time. And so preparing yourself to be the best leader you can be every time you walk into a wrestling room or into a room for tutoring or whatever it may be. For us, for me now at Beat the Streets, it is, I've got a bunch of people under me. Being up and being at 90-95% ready to go, organized, there with a purpose all the time, that radiates throughout. When our entire coaching staff had their shoes tied and on time for practice every day. Because if I was going to ask Kamal Bay to do that, we were going to have to do it. We stayed late and we went home early. We came early and we went home late. We dealt with family crises. We gave kids rides home. Whatever we have to do to support these kids and create this kind of like charismatic, high energy, bars set way up here situation. That's what we did. And so this kind of consistent, great effort, it starts with coaches. And frankly, if you want to have a great program, it's got to probably be 350 days a year. And if you don't feel it, man, you got to go down to the bathroom and talk to yourself. And I dealt with that a lot with my health issues, where I had to go in the bathroom and look myself in the mirror and say some things to myself that got me moving. And my number one thing is be the man they want you to be. Be the leader that you want to be, and be the man they want you to be. So being clear, being consistent, being charismatic with your kids and with your organization at all times is great. Never, ever, ever stop selling your mission. So, and then the last bit about that, if you don't mind me saying it, and this is really important. I think it's pretty prevalent in coaching now, but if you're not in to the Stoic principles of focusing on what you can control and only what you can control, it is huge in your organization. It keeps drama out of your organizations. It makes communication clear, and everything else. So that's a big piece for me.
And I love so much about that, Coach. Is so great. I was able to coach with Gary Mayab, which anybody that knows Gary Mayab sees him as a tremendous leader and builder of men and builder of culture. He always told me that you can beat a lot of coaches if you're willing to outwork them and, outlead them. Right. And that really speaks a lot to what you're talking about there. And I'm going to echo anything. Like I'm big on stoicism. I get the Daily Stoic. Any coach that's looking to learn a little bit more about that, that's a really easy way on a daily basis to get a great message and mind for, the way that you should be building yourself as an individual and building others. I think those are both huge. And, one of mindset's biggest principles is predator mindset versus prey mindset. And predator mindset really comes down to what do you control? And if you don't control it, why are you allowing it to take up space in your head?
Amen.
If you can start to, build yourself as that, a lot of us can build upon our own success. So we got a little bit over about 10 minutes left. So one, if anybody's got questions, throw them in the question and answer feature, and we'll see if we can get to them. But Coach, let's shift over to a little bit more of technique and tactics. Maybe some focus on, what do you do to really run a great room? I mean, I think we've all been in a room that is just humming with energy and with growth and with improvement. What are some things or some recommendations you would make about just running a great practice room, which then is going to create great wrestlers that step out into competition?
So I think let me start with just the most important thing is teach to the top 10 or 15% of the kids in the room. So if we're doing gymnastics, we're not slowing down for the kid that can't do the cartwheel. She or he's got to figure that out, right? This is what I used to tell them all the time. This is the opposite of the classroom. You strive to be great here. Everybody here can do a backflip. Some of you are going to be able to do it easier than others, but everybody is going to learn to do a backflip. So set your mind right and get going. And so like these expectations that you set, well, how am I ever going to get this if my kids can't shoot over their front knee? Well, I've got a couple kids for you. Jake Rundell, state champion, nationally ranked kid. I think he's a Fargo champ. Matt Rundell, third in Fargo, third in the Ironman, couldn't shoot over their front knee. I'm like, I to each their own. If you teach kids to have the highest expectations for themselves, right, and to chase like greatness nonstop, and the bar is set at the very best effort you can have, right, and you're setting that bar according to the best kids in your room, you're pushing the bar up constantly with those kids, and everybody else has to follow. Cream rises. It always will. And the truth is, wrestling's a high attrition rate. It always will be. It's the hardest sport you could ever do. Obviously, we want to save as many kids as we possibly can, but those are the kids that are going to score points for you in the big tournaments. Those are the kids that are going to set the bar for you on your team. They're your captains and everything else. It is more important to serve them well in the practice room than any other kid. And again, you're not neglecting. So this is what I used to tell people. The kid that I would know would love being part of our program, right? But was never going to win a wrestling match for me. He got a lot of time before and after practice. And I would mention something to him. I would have him lead a warm-up. There's a lot of meaningful things you can do for that kid, right? But he's maybe doesn't really like to compete, just wants to be part of the program. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And that's where you focus in that room on your best kids. So we're constantly pushing the bar, and you'd be surprised. Kids are sponges, how quickly they'll pick things up. You know, I never taught a wrestling stance. I really never taught anybody shoot over the front knee. We just started wrestling, and the bar was high and the energy was high. And from the time we started to the time we ended, nobody sat. Everybody moved, right? All the time. So our everything we did in our warm-ups had to do with becoming a better athlete and warming up hard. So our warm-ups were famous at these we ran like a 45-minute wrestling practice, right? Our kids were ready. They were ready to walk out on the mat and compete. But so there's that. The other thing is you can strength build in practice, and you incorporate that throughout practice. So give me 20 squat jumps before you get a drink. Everybody go max pull-ups before we break before live wrestling. So there's a lot you can do there in terms of keeping their bodies moving. And my thing is, if your body moves hard for 2 hours a day, harder than you ever dreamed possible, you're going to be in pretty good wrestling shape. You're going to wrestle really hard, right? And you're going to win a lot of wrestling matches, particularly at youth and high school level. If you go harder than the other kid, the guy that goes harder wins 95% of the matches. So that's super important. We never sat down. So we would bring the kids in, we would show very short instruction, we would send them out, and they were expected to start drilling. And my big thing was, who's the first group drilling? So they raced to be the first group drilling. All right. And then when we drilled, unless we were shooting low singles or something from the outside, you never take your hands off that person. So I think it was Chase Pam, he came and did a clinic for us, and he called it staying in the drill. And so we never took our hands off that guy. So if I take you down, right, my first thing is first, always use your hands. Always use your hands and move your feet, right? Second thing is explode through your action and finish on their hip, butt, or back. So that's a very important thing, particularly in leg attacks. But even if I'm going short offense and I'm chasing legs, I'm not going to finish and come around behind that person while they're on their hands and knees, because that doesn't score in the quarterfinals of the state tournament. You got to put them down hard, and you have to bury your shoulder into their hip and make sure they're pinned to the ground so the ref has ample time to say two. So our thing was butt, hip, and back, stay in the drill. We always kept our hands on them. So if I take Jake Hunter down, right, I'm driving you into the ground. Then my hands and head stay on you as you knee slide up, right? And this is how we keep kids moving hard. So how hard your kids, and we had a whole system for drilling. And you had to, again, you got to talk about it nonstop every single day because it's super hard. But our kids drilled so hard that they ended up wrestling really hard. And it became, it's single most important thing you can do is make sure their bodies are moving very, very hard, and that they learn how to wrestle when they're tired. So when running the big room, that was key. Our room was harsh. Expectations were high. We laughed a lot before practice. We hugged a lot after practice, all that stuff. But things were hard in our room. Right. There was we had established trust and love. My thing is trust, love, and truth. Right. Once you get to that truth point, then you start making them run through that brick wall. But that's a big piece for me is you got to be hard. You got to have high expectations. You got to be hard. I'm sure people could do it and be better than me and less hard than me. I didn't have that in my repertoire. So we were hard. we made sure to have, like I said, lots of fun afterwards. And then the pride factor after practice. Okay, let me start with before practice. A lot of coaches give their rah-rah speech after practice. Do it before practice because they're about to work out for 2 hours. Right. So you prepare your motivational speech and then you start your warm-up. You know what I mean? Everybody's ready to roll and then you go. After practice is logistics. But the other thing we talked about all the time, this is really big on peaking, was that last half of the season. Nobody does things like us. Nobody's. How many pounds do you think you lost? 8, 9 pounds today? How many guys you thinking that you're going to see at the state tournament also lost that weight? How many guys drill with this guy? How many guys get this partner? I found any way to create an advantage in their head so that when they walked out on the mat, they felt like they were expected to win. And no matter how nervous they were, what was going through their head, you wore the OP on your chest. That's what we're creating now at Beat the Streets. So things are changing. You know, the expectations for Beat the Streets now are going through the roof. And we're a year or two away from walking out. I train with Beat the Streets, no matter what high school I'm with or what youth group, they'll be with our youth groups. But there is an expectation for how hard you're going to wrestle, how hard you're going to fight when you compete, right? And how you're going to represent that BTS. And so at the end of practice, there was a lot of that is mindset training. So
I'm all for that. We do that with teams all across the country. You know, and it is interesting, you know, all the programs that I was part of, I don't think I ever had a coach that really focused on that motivation before practice. It's such a simple change that, you know, for those people that maybe they're not excited to be there yet, if you can create that excitement beforehand, if you give them that purpose, you know, and that's one of the things I try to focus on, you know, in any organization I'm leading is like, what is our purpose? What does that drive? You know, like you're talk about that culture a lot. You're giving them the reason that they're going to work hard that day.
Oh yeah.
And then at that end, that self-fulfillment, you know, that build themselves up as individuals, like celebrating the fact that they went that hard and that they are, again, kind of like you said with recruiting, you will be different. And even amongst those people that are different, that call themselves wrestlers, you're athletes, right? You're building them up that you're even more different than everybody else that's even in this sport. I think those are two big pearls that I think everybody could look at applying. And it's not even that difficult or that much of a change, something small like that. Well, Coach, if somebody wants to learn more about Beat the Streets or look at like trying to start a Beat the Streets program, I know one of our individuals that's coming to us live from Canada asked about trying to get a Beat the Streets program in Calgary, Alberta. You know, where should people go for more information about BTS or to maybe look at, you know, starting a Beat the Streets program for their city themselves?
I'm drawing a blank on Beat the Streets National's website. I think it's type in Beat the Streets National. We just hired, we're in the process of making a dynamite new hire, a new executive director who's going to be, I don't know that it's public yet, so I don't want to say any names, but big things are happening. We've raised a bunch of money. I'm on the national executive board. Our goal is 28 cities by 2028. We're in I think 9 official, about to be 11 right now. We're the fastest growing group in America in terms of wrestling. We're really proud of that. We have the fastest growing group of girls wrestling, and you should definitely want to be part of it. We're happy to be leaders in the women's wrestling space, and we feel honored to be part of that. Beat the Street Chicago just had a state champ and 7 all-staters at the girls tournament. So we're excited about that. But we want as many people in networking with us and involved with us. We're looking for donors, obviously, and everything else as possible. If you're interested in becoming a Beat the Streets, here's what I tell everybody. It's a significant undertaking, right? And just because we're going to grow Beat the Streets, and pretty soon we're going to have a big announcement with a new executive director. Reach out to him. You can also reach out to me. I can put you in contact with the right people. Everybody in the wrestling world has my information, but you can be impactful and not be a Beat the Streets as well. So I 2 or 3 people reach out to me and say, you know, I've got 80 kids, I've got a bunch of at-risk kids. I want to be a Beat the Streets. It's a significant undertaking. You need a board, you need a 501c3. You know what I mean? There's a lot. You need bylaws. There's a lot there, right? But we should have a bunch of people in the wrestling community incubating right now. starting wrestling clubs, looking into getting a 501c3 and becoming a real nonprofit and forming a real board. And then you start talking about getting into the real beat the street space. But it shouldn't stop you from doing what you want to do. You know, there's a guy named Randy Bryan who's got kids up at our camp right now, and he's in Austin. He's a Southside Chicago guy, but he's doing it right now. And, you know, so I'm going to put him in contact with the new guy and see if we can't start working something for a Beat the Streets Austin. So there's a lot of that, but I don't want to promise the world to anybody. It's a hard thing. You really have to have your ducks in a row, and you really have to be squared away, and you have to run a real organization, just like you have to do if you're in a wrestling program or anything, you know, small college program or anything else. But if you are in, you know, so let's keep doing that, and let's keep building that. Reach out to me, reach out to our new guy and everything else. But what I'm running into right now is there's a lot of mid-level, smaller groups who say, okay, I can't do it. I'm going to fold up shop. You can change lives. Get 20 kids in a wrestling room. You know what I mean? Earn trust and love, and you know, and really start coaching them right there. And if it grows from there, you know what I mean? Now we're probably talking about a Beat the Street city. But
yeah, and it is.
Is that clear? Am I making sense on that?
Yeah, no, completely. I think the big message that is a good takeaway is, you know, Beat the Streets programs are about something much bigger than just wrestling programs. There's a lot other pieces that go into it, and it is a great goal for individuals to look to see if they're the right fit or their city's the right fit for Beat the Streets program. But don't let, you know, the mission get in the way of the minutia. As Coach said, first step first, get out there and start getting wrestling, recruiting wrestling, create a great program. And then along the way, if it can fit with the Beat the Streets mission, might be a great next step. And I know I've been a Beat the Streets coach in Philadelphia, which also has a tremendous programming, you know, for over 5 years at this point. And it's great to see the growth in our inner cities. When I moved to Philly in 2007 to go to UPenn, there really was very, very little wrestling in Philadelphia at the local level, and to see it really start to grow. And I think, you know, we have a couple alumni from the program. That one is fighting in the UFC. I believe he's 2-0, Miles Lee, and then another who's attending Ryder and had a lot of success as a freshman for the Ryder program, wrestling D1. And it's just great to see that. And the Beat the Streets mission is very impactful and is a big area of growth for our sport. But Coach, I appreciate your time. Again, for everybody listening, you know, we're driving Beat the Streets donations because it's a program and it's an organization that Wrestling Mindset has strived to assist and help as much as possible for several years now. Like everything else, it takes financing to be able to drive that mission and be able to bring in the solid leaders and the great programming that is changing the lives of so many and continue to grow our sport, but not just for the young men in those places, but the young women as well. So, Coach, any last thoughts before we finish up?
Jake, if people are looking to make a financial contribution, the single, I think, most impactful thing to do is go on that Beat the Streets national website and become a monthly donor.
Yeah.
And even if it's $5 a month, $10 a month, you know, that, I mean, you know, you skip a latte, which everybody needs to skip anyways, right? Whatever, a mocha latte or whatever you have, you know, and you're doing something good in the world, and you can do it from anywhere. And our national group right now is, man, it's an exciting time to be part of Beat the Streets. It is an amazing, amazing organization led by Clint Motter and the Philly guys, and they're the standard bearers. But it's been one of the great honors of my life being part of Beat the Streets. And so we appreciate people supporting us and believing in what we're doing and helping. So.
All right, perfect. Well, it's been an honor to have you on, Coach, and I look forward to speaking with you in the near future and helping Beat the Streets grow.
Thanks, Jake.